Hey everybody, Malik B.Outdoors in the house right now. I'm working on a fishing reel I was using yesterday, and I noticed that right here my bail got a little off balance. It shouldn't be like that. It should be just flush and have a smooth rotation to it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go inside of it and troubleshoot and see if I can figure out what's wrong with it. And hopefully it'll help some of you guys out there when you're fishing poles and things get messed up, that you can fix it. And sometimes there's line caught up under the bail or up under the spool, and we have to figure out how to get it out. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disassemble this, and the first thing I'm gonna do here is take off the drag screw. The drag screw is going to give me access to the spool. And you just continue to screw it counterclockwise until it lifts off. Then the spool itself will lift off. Now what's going on in here is right there. If you can see, there's a screw right there that's loose, and it should be flush with the bottom of the reel. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this stop washer. I'm gonna take this screw completely out, and if you screw it counterclockwise, it tightens, and if you screw it clockwise, it unloosens. So that's my issue right there, that little screw. But since I have it, I'm gonna go inside and I'm gonna check everything out to make sure all components are working good. There's a release spring and everything. I'm not gonna do nothing to it. I have some Real Magic, and I'm just gonna lube that up. I'm gonna replace that bail. So from there is a washer, and that washer fell out. I'm going to replace it just by sliding it over top of that there. Then when I put this back, it's going to flush that for me. Okay, so now that's good. The screw that was giving me a problem, I'm gonna put it back. And remember, it has to go counterclockwise to tighten. A lot of these things I do and I figure out on my own, because before I say a fishing pole is no good, I'll work on it to see if I can fix it. So I put that back, and I'm going to tighten it. And put the bail back on, but before I do that, I'm also going to spray some Real Magic in it to give it some lubrication, to make sure all the components are well lubed. Drip out the excess. And then the top right there, can't zoom in to show you, but there's some residue of water and things like that. So I'll spray the top also. We're going to put this back on. You got to be careful again. I got this line hanging off of here, and that can be hazardous because it gets caught up under there, and then I have to take it apart again. So then we put back our drag key, or screw, what you want to call it. guess what I just did? I put that back, and if you notice there's a gap in between here, we got to take that off. And the reason that has to come off is because I left out an element. That element is your lock bolt. And what that does is add support to how far that reel is going to go down. You don't have to adjust it, you don't have to guess, because it's going to stop where it's supposed to be. Put that back on. Now we'll crank this tension screw back on here. And just like that, we got a quick fix. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna unspool this thing. I'm unspooling because sometimes I cast and I realize that I'm not getting the distance that I want out of my throw. So and that tells me that my spool is not spooled properly or to capacity. And this is a lot of line on here, but it's still not full. And right now I'm doing this the hard way because there is an easy fix, so let's go back and do that. We're going to take off this tension screw. We're going to release the whole bell. Take that back off again. We're going to take this off. I'm just going to lay that on the floor, and we're going to do this just like this. I'm going to show you something else that I found out a lot of people don't know about these reels, and they'll buy them and they have no clue that it is built to be reversible. Like I said, this line was pretty decent. It's Mr. Crappie. It's 6 pound, 8 pound test. It has a very thin diameter and is very good for panfish. So, you know, don't go out there and try to get a line that's heavy. I see a lot of guys go fishing and they go get 10 pound test line and they brim fishing. It changes the action of your lure. All right, so therefore, that's the conclusion of that. It's unspooled. So what I'm going to do now is put it back on here. readjust my drag key. Flip that bell. Now you got a smooth rotation. Before I disassembled it, you can see this here was wobbly, or what I would say off of calibration. When I say off of calibration, it didn't have a complete balance to it. So I went in, took it apart, lubed it up, put it back on, and now it's smooth just like when I first bought it. This is a 2000 series. It's equivalent to a Quantum. I bought it out of off of Wish, and they were like $16 each. So now I'm going to show you that other feature that most people don't know. When you go to the store to buy these reels, you might pick up one and figure that it's just left-handed, and then you wind up, you're going to the pond, and then you're using it upside down like this because you think it's a left-handed reel or a right-handed reel. Well, there's a screw on either side of the reel that if you take it loose, it will allow you to remove the handle. That side, this side. The remarkable part is you can switch it to the other side and replace the screw, and it now becomes a right-handed reel. Okay? So don't think when you go in the store that you don't have a left-handed reel, you don't have a right-handed reel. That screw on most open face reels will allow you to take it off and switch the handle. Here is what you have is called the anti-reverse gear. And what happens is you can reel it backwards or forwards. The only problem with that is the spool never locks. So if there's a line on there and you're reeling and the fish pulling, it's going to pull in the opposite direction. So I always keep mine on lock. So now it'll turn right, but it won't turn left. See, it won't go backwards, but it'll go forwards. If I switch this anti, then I can turn it backwards. And I can also turn it forwards. But again, it will not lock. So as you're fighting with a fish, it can be a good feature and a bad feature because you're not, because you're not getting that tension that you need to put on the line to retrieve it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this back. Because I am right-handed. I fish my bait casters all right-handed, but all my open face, I retrieve them left-handed. So you just see me take it out of one side, put it in the other side, forward, backwards. But when I put it on, I want it to go this way. That's retrieving my line in, okay? And another key feature is when you put these screws in, when you get to the pond or wherever you're going, like right now, I've already called my nephew, got the boat set up on the truck, you know, all my gear, I'm doing a gear check and I'm ready to go. But always check this screw, because in the course of fishing, they do come loose because of vibration and constant use of the fishing pole, and they'll work themselves out, all right? So now I'm gonna get into the spooling part. Make sure the bail is up. Yep. So what I have a tendency to do is take this and I'm gonna wrap it. I give 2 or 3 turns on that wrap. Then I give me a tie. Draw down, go around again, tie again, tie again. And draw down, and I'm going around one more time, and then I'm going to tie again. Got my little nippers, so I can cut that right close to the spool. Now I'm going to close that, and we're going to begin to spool this one. When you see me tie it, I put 3 knots close to the spool. Those 3 knots will never come in contact with causing line problems, resistance, or line flares, because they're so close to the spool, and by the time I spool this completely, it'll be too much line on the spool for it to be a problem. Here is the spool all over the place because I don't have my spool holder, which is outside in the garage. So now we got it. Set it up on the edge and it's coming off freely. We're going to fill this spool up. We want it as full as we can possibly get it without the line jumping off. Sometimes you can over spool them. They have techniques that you can go on YouTube where people tell you sometimes if that's the case, you boil some hot water, you sit your spool in it, and what that does is it takes the memory out of the line. And what memory is when the line, when you throw it and it comes back and it has a lot of coils in it, that means that line has high memory. I like to buy line that has low memory or no memory. So now what I got to see is this. So what I did is I released my spool to see how much line was going to come off. And it did. It popped off a little bit, but I can handle it after I rig the pole up and get my jigs and everything on here. It'll take some of that tension off my line. So if you're looking at it, and when I say spooled, it's right up under the lip of that of the bell. And if you have it where it's not enough line, it doesn't come off freely. It catches on that lip. So it should be as full as you can get it without it coming over the spool. So now I'm gonna lift my bell. I'm gonna take this. Run it through. I'm gonna thread the whole pole up. And see, that's what happens when you get old and your eyes go bad. I thought I had it. we got in there. We're gonna spool and thread. I always try to tell people, at least I know for me, if I know I'm going in the morning, I want to get all my stuff right the night before. Let's wrap around something down there. Okay, hold on, Houston. We got a catch down here somewhere. There it is right there. So I think one of the biggest peeves I have is calling up a friend and saying, hey, let's go fishing. And they'd be like, all right, I'm coming. They get here in the morning and they'll say, hey, well, man, do you have any line? Or I broke my rod last night, or my rod was broken, I haven't fixed it. Well, keep in consideration, if you know you're going fishing, you always need to do an equipment check. Equipment check says, let me make sure that everything I have is functioning. It's going to be, feasible for me to use it. And I told y'all my eyes, I got glasses, but they're back there, and I don't put them on. So now we have that. And it's wrapped. I ain't gonna worry about that part. So I'm gonna select my jig. And what I found out the other day is I was using this 1/16. Mr. Crappy Magnet. That's classified as an inline hook. I don't have any of the yep. Is that one? No. I was looking for the round jig heads. As a matter of fact, I just found one. And I've done this before and I showed you this, but this, let me take the skirt off. This jig head is what I started off with. And the only problem with that is the gapping space of that hook. A crappie can get that. Most of the time your brim has to get it, but it's a little harder because the hook is wider than the brim's mouth. But with this inline, straight line, Mr. Crappy Magnet, it's got a smaller gap. And when I rig that, I like to go through the eye, if I can see it, like so. I leave me a tag in so I can adjust, because it's the simplest knot you're ever gonna see. When you do like that, you're gonna take it and wrap it around your finger. When you wrap it around the finger, you take the hook, feed it through that loop. But instead of having the loop way up there, I draw down on it. So what that does is allows my jig to swim freely on my string. My tag end is this excess piece of line here. So what I'm gonna do is cut the tag. I told you these eyes. And then that's what I have. You can see the little knot right there, but that's gonna bounce freely. I left my skirts for my jig head in the car, well actually in my tackle box. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rig a Lake Fork minnow, which is this. It has what's called a twirl tail, which when it's running through the water, it's like a propeller. Then I also have the Lake Fork minnow with a paddle tail. It bounces up and down, but it's got a circular motion also giving a whole lot of vibration. So I'm gonna put this one on here for starters. This is what I'm gonna use in the morning. And when I rig it, it's got a round top and a flat bottom. And I always like to rig it so the flat part is down. And this goes the same way I was telling you when I rig my jig heads and my jigs together. The minute that your soft plastic touches your lead is when your hook should come out. And you can see my hook right there. So then I'm going to feed that up the jig. And what that does is it gives me a true swimming lure. It's in the water and it's going to run straight. Okay, that's proper, and I'm going to show you improper. And I've seen people do this, and I'm going to use one that's no good. I'm not going to waste one. Never should you rig a jig where it's like this. If this is what you're doing, you're not going to catch any fish. I've seen people do that, and I've seen people do this. The hook is not exposed, so even if the fish does decide to hit whatever this looks like is falling in the water, you can't get a hook set. So remember, it's the same thing with this one. This hook set or this jig head is 1/8 of an ounce. The one I just put on there is 1/16, and then the one after that I would have would be 1/4. With this one, it's the same rule that applies. You push the jig all the way around. When it touches the plastic, you push it so it runs true. It should be straight, just like that. Okay? So now that I have that, I'm just going to hook this guy up. And then here's the other thing I always do. I check my drag. And that's for me pulling it, and I would say that's probably 2 pounds of pressure at the most where I can set the drag. So for the most part, you might catch, you know, depending on where you're fishing at, big crappie that will pull that drag, and then you get some thick crappie that will also pull that drag. But you want to have enough drag so that if the fish pulls, you have enough tension so it doesn't pop the line, because it has a little give back to it instead of resistance. And as long as it's giving back, you can retrieve without worrying about your line popping. And in some cases, you might hook a bass. And if you hook a bass and the drag is set, that's the same thing. As long as there's some give back where they can pull while you're reeling, then you're fine. But if you got that thing set so tight that when you start to retrieve your line, and keep in mind, like I said, we're using 6 pound, 8 pound test line. You catch a 4 pound, 5 pound bass on this and to pop that line like it's nothing because of his strength. So always make sure you have your drag set. I showed you all the components of the reel inside and outside. You troubleshoot, showed you how it works down here, show you how you can change your reel from left to right. So don't go in the store thinking that you can't find a left-handed reel. The one other thing that I did that I was too deep into it before I did it is my, when I was loading the boat the other day, I put this on and it broke up here. So what I wind up doing, and I can show you here, these two rods are the exact same rods. If you notice, this rod is a lot shorter than this rod. So when I was putting it on the boat, I pushed it up against the truck bed and it popped right there. So what I did was cut the top of the rod, took the eye off, removed all the coating from around it, put the eye back on, and repaired my rod, you know. And I did that. I put crazy glue and I took fishing line and wrapped it around to secure or give that eye some backbone so it don't just pop out. And it's pretty firm, you know. It just shortened my rod, which means all of my bend down is going to be down here somewhere versus up here. But anyway, with Malik B.Outdoors, I try to show you how to do things, troubleshoot, and have a good day on the water. So until next time, stay tuned to Malik B.Outdoors, how to repair your own rods and reel. Deuces.